The internet is a black hole of content, constantly morphing and expanding by the millisecond. Something or someone that felt damn near inescapable a mere 5 years ago might not even be remembered anymore by some of its biggest fans. There are things that break the cruel laws of the internet, however, things that have stayed universal constants since their inception. One of these anomalies will be the topic of today's video. Slender Man is one of the most recognizable internet-born creations if you're over the age of 11. I could use a bunch of examples showing off the Slender mania that was happening in the 2010s.
Number 4, imagine going out for a relaxing day on the beach and seeing this mysterious figure walking just a couple of miles away.
But I'd rather just use one. In 2014, two girls almost murdered one of their friends in order to fulfill a ritual for their fictional character. Thankfully, the girl lived, and her two friends were tried as adults in court. Of course, there were other factors at play here as well. The girls had mental disorders that weren't diagnosed until after the event, and I also want to point out how deeply fucked this entire situation is. I don't want to sound like I'm defending the two kids. I'm not. I brought this up to show you how influential Slenderman was at the peak of his popularity. The incident was just one of the many stories in Slenderman's long and complicated history. A history which includes a massively known analog horror series, that's actually good, a very popular video game, fan movies, fan sequels. He was everywhere. But suddenly, he kinda just faded from online discussion. The question I, and probably you, are asking is, why? Well, I tried to write the short answer, but I ended up making a 10,000 word essay, so here's a video instead. With the holidays coming up, things are getting darker quicker and I'm getting more depressed, and I'm sure you might feel the same. But there is a solution. This video is sponsored by Raycon. No joke, these earbuds have been the best buddy a person could ask for. I use these for work, like all the time, and a huge bonus is how well they handle sweat. But these headphones do so much more. Partner is nagging you? Well, thanks to the earbuds noise cancelling feature, no they're not. Suddenly your partner is filing for divorce? Well, that'd be a problem if these fellas didn't have 32 hours of battery life. I'll be able to blast whatever music I want while I'm getting a divorce, thank you very much. You have to give your partner half of your assets and you're losing the house? At least I'll be able to give my earbuds 90 minutes of extra battery life on a 10-minute charge. Without a wire, by the way. I'm telling you this now. I'm gonna be wearing these at my funeral. So if you want a best buddy who will never abandon you, then check out Raycon using my link in the description and pinned comment for up to 25% off site-wide. That is buyraycon.com/oranges for up to 25% off site-wide. Thank you. And major thanks to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Due to many adaptations of the character, I don't think many people really even know how mundane Slenderman's birth really was. I just realized while writing how crazy it is to call someone's birth mid. God, imagine if someone's parents did that. In 2009, a thread began on the Something Awful forums with a goal of adding supernatural elements to images. And one specific person named, Victor Surge would create this. Since there was a whole thread about this stuff, there were so many other images that could have taken off. So why this one? Well, looking through the original thread, I think the images all suffer from the fact that liminal spaces are kind of hit or miss. Like, I imagine it does affect a lot of people quite strongly, but there's also the same amount of people who look at this and go, well, it's just a fucking room, isn't it? They also fail for kind of just being generic. This was the era on YouTube where every video was a jump scare. This image of Slenderman stands out because if you aren't really paying attention, then everything would look normal. A pale dude wearing a suit isn't a rare sight, especially when you live in London. But once you know where to look, it's all you'll be able to focus on. This guy towering over these kids while having no expression. Not because he's apathetic, but because he literally doesn't have a face. In the nondescript current year, this image isn't anywhere near as clever. But back in 2009, this resonated with a lot of people. More images following the first started to drop. All of them tried to capture the same feeling the original had, with varying results. It was also only a matter of time before the lore for the character was made. There are lots of stories to choose from, but the main trends was this man stalking and terrorizing anyone unfortunate enough to run into him. And these stories were spread en masse due to the popular format of creepypastas at the time. A creepypasta is... I don't think I need to explain this. A creepypasta is something that you should already know if you're over the age of 15, like... Fucking come on. Victor Surge very quickly lost control of his idea, as everyone who had a computer at the time wanted to do something with Slender Man. Which leads us to... Oh my god, Marble Hornets, wow! Because you're a huge fan of me and watched all of my videos, you know I've already spoken about this series in the past, and my opinion hasn't really changed since then. I still believe that Marble Hornets is the best piece of Slenderman related media that we've ever gotten. Instead of the high energy scares you're no doubt used to seeing, Marble Hornets is almost painfully slow. I wouldn't blame a person for forgetting this was even a horror series sometimes, but right as this happens, right as you get comfortable, you're reminded that the Operator is one of the nastiest horror characters out there. Oh, yeah, Slender Man is called the Operator in this. The stalking that had only been described in creepypastas was given the correct level of scariness in video form. The Operator is so good at hiding in plain sight, so sometimes he'll literally be caught on camera and no one in the video will even acknowledge it. The low quality of these also add into the lingering paranoia that comes from realizing someone has been stalking you without your knowledge. You're paranoid that they could be watching you right now. You're also questioning whether these few pixels are even him. Maybe you have to come to terms with the fact that your mind is just playing tricks on you. This version of Slender Man doesn't need to chase you because he's watching you isolate yourself from everyone you know and love. You've done the hard part by allowing your paranoia to control your actions. You've practically trapped yourself. And now the Operator can pick the perfect time to finally erase you from this world, while those people you pushed away are none the wiser. This was incredibly effective in adding to the Slender Man mythos. At the time, found footage content hadn't been completely ruined by Hollywood, so this actually was an interesting way to flesh out Slender Man's more subtle traits. It also just allowed more people to see Slender Man and wonder if Marble Hornets was real, which definitely helped. A lot of attention was being directed towards this idea now. People on internet forums had probably seen at least one creepypasta about this guy, and now there were heaps of videos with him in them too.
Holy shit! It's the Slender Man! And he's cooking hot dogs on the stove!
I'd argue that Slender Man was still niche. I feel like people still needed to explain what Slender Man was at this point. All of that would change in 2013. This was the year Slender Man would blow up and never be the same again. A creator by the name of Mark Hadley would release the game Slender, the 8 pages, where the goal was, and get this, you were supposed to collect 8 pages while Slender Man chases you through a forest. That's kind of crazy, I never would have guessed. I'm sure this looks dated now, but in 2012, for a solo project, this didn't look half bad. Oh yeah, that's right, Mark programmed and published an entire game all on his own, and it didn't suck major toes. And this was an Undertale-less year. I love how I started to treat Undertale like the birth of Jesus Christ for these videos. I'm so cool. Then YouTubers got a hold of the game. Saying most people experienced this game vicariously through the YouTubers they watched at the time isn't a crazy statement, right? Some of these videos have millions of views, and I refuse to believe the turnout was 1-to-1. You wouldn't notice though, because Slender Man graduated from being a niche internet thing and became a pop culture icon. Everyone was talking about him. I lived the most miserable, boring childhood, and even I heard about Slender Man at this time. I remember all of the YouTubers that used to play this game, like the guy who made Thick of It and his little brother. whatever their names are. It felt like the game dropped at just the right time, as early 2010s YouTube was dominated by Let's Players, all trying to find the next big game. I think this was easily like the top 5 eras of my life, to be honest. Anyway, after the crazy success of the first game, Mark would create a remake, and that was almost universally praised by the fans of the original. Good stuff. Fans of the original Slender game attempted to make their own versions, resulting in a lot of fan games. Since a map with a bunch of Unity trees worked once, a lot of people wanted to try and make the same thing again. Come on, we all know how this stuff goes. Oh, it had some unique ideas, but the original was more put together. Moving on. Fans did start experimenting with more unique ideas, like Alone in Tokyo, a game that replaces the misty forests of Slender for an empty area. Or another fan idea, Slender Rising, a game that has you pay for it. Okay, never mind. And of course, my favorite one, drumroll please, Slender Run. No, I'm not even gonna make a joke here. I'm gonna just let you sit with that one. Since Slender Man had been a thing, it's always been molded to fit into new genres. We saw this at other people's attempt at images. We saw it in Marble Hornets, and we definitely saw it in Slender. So the point of this section isn't to say Slender Man got popular and therefore bad, because it's far more layered than that. What I believe truly changed the way Slender Man was perceived was his core traits slowly being watered down. You see it a lot in his earlier stuff. Slender Man was a guy who hid in plain sight, knowing that the only people who would see him were those looking for him. He'd then start stalking those same eagle-eyed people, tormenting them mentally until the perfect time to erase them arose. He also had weird stuff going on with kids, but now traits like this don't really vibe well with the larger audience. So these parts of his lore were silently dropped in a lot of the stories. People were creating content with Slender Man front and center, which kind of defeated what made him scary in the first place. Slender Man benefited from paranoia, the idea that he really and truly might not be in the videos you think he's in. It's a lot harder to capture that energy when he's now staring you directly in the face in a lot of these fan works. I'm not even gonna re-record it, doesn't matter. This was eerily similar to how I feel about Chucky. I love all of his movies, but they kind of changed from straight horror in the 80s to a comedy in the 90s and then a mix of both in the late 2010s. I bring up Chucky for 2 reasons here. First, it managed to avoid the biggest issue I think Slender Man faced at the end of its peak. And second, rest in peace gamer, the genre of horror had changed so much in between the first and third Child Play films. Audiences were getting tired of the same old slashers coming out every year, following the same plot points and cliches from 20 odd years ago. The genre was tanking, well until Scream came out. Scream single-handedly dragged the slasher genre kicking and screaming into the 21st century by avoiding the tropes people were sick of seeing, while still paying respect to the slasher icons that inspired the film. That was a huge shift on how horror was written to accommodate this smarter audience. Characters weren't fucking idiots, they were far more fleshed out and iconic. And the movies themselves were filled with meta jokes, and Chucky was no different. It probably sounds like I've lost the point I was trying to make, but I swear this was all important into fully fleshing it out. And also I just really like Chucky. If I had to summarize Chucky's personality in 3 traits, it would be wisecracking, sadistic, and deeply terrifying when he wants to be. In the first movie, I'd say his most outstanding trait was his sadism, followed by him being terrifying. He did wisecrack, but very rarely. Modern Chucky kind of has these flips. His one-liners have been given far more emphasis, and his cussing went through the roof. He still had moments where he was genuinely scary, and his kills went from quick and surprising moments to very elaborate moments. This actually becomes a plot point in Chucky Season 3, which is kind of funny. The reason Chucky survived for as long as he did is because he changed to fit a new audience, while still having traits that appealed to the original fans. I wouldn't say Slender Man did the same. Despite him becoming this far more important figure, and his depictions changing so drastically, it seemed anybody who was making this content at the time either wanted to use a watered down version of his personality and put him in the same situations which felt hollow, or they wanted to take him fully seriously but put him in different situations that couldn't take full advantage of what made him scary in the first place. If you had been a fan of the original Slender Man, I doubt either of these interpretations made you all too happy. At this point, the very thing that birthed Slender Man was killing him. In the late 2010s, creepypastas as a whole were beyond played out. This was the same time we were getting shit like Squidward's suicide and Jeff the Killer, which only really came out due to how oversaturated creepypastas were getting. Also, Sonic.exe was a thing, I guess. All that really leaves me left to talk about is how Slender Man just faded from everyone's minds. What was once the biggest horror icon on the internet had now become a fad, a passing event in a larger sea of divisive creepypastas. And that kinda sucks, because I thought Slender Man was really cool. He was so different from what other people were doing at the time, and I really liked that about him. I was never a fan of creepypastas. I thought they were lame and kinda cliche. But Slender Man, glazing coming, Slender Man was genuinely unnerving. This wasn't a cynical take on horror or basic online horror story, oh look, jump scare. This single image told such a powerful story that was expanded upon by other incredibly skilled people. And now, none of it matters. Pack it up, we're all gonna go home and I'm gonna come. So Slenderverse was announced. Anyway, I want to give a quick thanks to all of the patrons you now see on screen, but especially Pwep, much appreciated, Obscuroni, and Po-Fanatic, or Israfel's Fire. I really appreciate anyone who's checked out the Patreon or watches this video at all. So I hope all of you have a great day and a wonderful Christmas, because I won't be posting another video. See you, lads.